Hey, good day, everybody, and welcome to your Ruby Live event. My name is Eric Wynkoop, and I'm the Director of Culinary Instruction here at Ruby, and I'm also on the instructional team. I'm one of your chef instructors in the courses. And, in particular, I'd like to welcome you to my office hours. And today is my chance to field your questions and to do my best to give a meaningful response that'll get you back in the kitchen and cooking again. As we get started, I'd like to mention just a couple of housekeeping items. And the first one is, if you would like to participate a little more directly in today's program, you're welcome to submit a question or a comment via the dialog box that you'll find in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And that'll make its way to the queue that you also see on the right-hand side. And as you look at those pre-populated questions, in the individual rectangles, you'll see a heart-shaped icon. And this is item number 2. If you would like a particular question answered sooner than later, you can click on that icon and it'll pop it up in priority. But otherwise, I will get started and address the questions that you've posed for me today. Thank you very much. And the first one is from Diane, who says, what's the best way to store ginger root and turmeric root? Well, I would imagine there are a few different good ways to do it, kind of depending on your preference and the situation and your surroundings. But I'll tell you what I do. We buy both of those items, fresh and in a pretty good size quantity. So I will clean them up and basically just rinse them of any loose dirt that might be adhering to the surface. And then I'll cut them into pieces that are practical for us. And that's usually an inch or so long. And then that goes into the freezer. And then I'm able to pull out pieces of ginger and turmeric, and I will grate it on a microplane. And then that goes into chaha or chai in the morning or any of the cooking that we might be doing. And I just keep the skin on as well. There's no need to remove the skin, and it certainly doesn't bother me. But of course, if you prefer, you can take the time to do that. But that's the way that I do it. Give that a try and see if that might work for you. Thank you. Hey, next up, we've got a question from Robert, who says, thickeners. Some plant foods need to absorb water, which takes time and varies based on their age. How can I use chia and flax to thicken items, but not impart some flavor and graininess to the dish? Robert, this is probably the same challenge that I've come across a number of times. And let's talk through this, although I'll start by saying I don't have a great solution for you. What I will try to do is grind those items just as finely as I can, and then, add it to the liquid in question to take advantage of the gelling effect, right, of these two ingredients, chia and flax. Now, if you have other flavorful items in that mix that can stand up against the flavor of these two items, then you're heading down the right path. But they do have distinctive flavors, and it can be hard to totally mask it or override it with other flavors. And I find that there's going to be some texture. Again, it depends on what it's going into. Sometimes it's more or less noticeable. Now, the other thing to keep in mind in the plant-based world in terms of thickeners is you've got all of these refined starch thickeners like tapioca and arrowroot and cornstarch and other examples that are commonly used. They are very simply mixed with water. It should be cold. It could be another liquid, of course, but the cornstarch, for example, is going to be evenly distributed, within that water, and then that can be added to the pot, right? The larger pot of soup or liquid that you want to thicken. Remember to bring that up to temperature to gelatinize the starches, to activate the starches so that you get the thickening effect. And that's typically going to be at a temperature above 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And the easiest guideline is to just bring that liquid up to a gentle boil for just a short period of time. It might be a couple of minutes is usually adequate. Stir that pot to distribute the heat to ensure even thickening or gelatinizing of those starches. Okay, that's a very common approach to using plant-based thickeners. Thank you. And next up, we have a question from Shar, who says, with it being Cookbook Month, do you have a favorite cookbook that has delicious recipes? Have a great day. Thanks, Shar. Yes, and I was just thinking about this. October each year is National Cookbook Month. And a couple of ideas that come to mind I happen to have within arm's reach here, Shar. One was published, I think, in 2022, and a very fun book. All right. And I'll just hold that up for everyone to see here. This is all plant-based. And the title is Be a Plant-Based Woman Warrior. And this is penciled by the Esselstyns. It comes chock full of gorgeous photographs. And the recipes are a lot of fun. There's a lot of flavor, a lot of texture, a lot of color. And of course, they're good for you too. And, this is great if you want to follow a recipe. It's also great if you want to look for some inspiration. In other words, you might find a half a dozen recipes that end up as your go-to recipes, but then you modify those to make them your own in some way. And otherwise, just looking at photographs are inspirational, right? So this is a great book. Another one, which was released earlier this year, is called The Mystic Kitchens of Nepal. And this one is very specific, of course, looking at the foods and food culture of Nepal. And this also has some great photographs, has a lot of personal stories from the author's childhood in Kathmandu, and a lot of fun. There's some great dishes in here. I'm a fan of eggplant. So there's an eggplant and chickpea curry recipe that's nice, as well as an eggplant, okra, and potato dish. Now that's very nice, and others too. This one is not 100% plant-based, but there are certainly a lot of plant-based recipes in here if you're interested. So give that some consideration. The Mystic Kitchens of Nepal. And so there you go. I hope that is helpful, Shar. And thank you so much for posing that question. Next up is Michael, who says, what can I use to reduce sodium without compromising the saltiness? So the way to do this, a couple of things, I think, and these can work simultaneously. One is to bring up the flavor through other ingredients. And we do this by bringing in things like onion and garlic and the relatives of those ingredients, like scallions and leeks and naganegi and other items, as well as herbs and spices, which add a lot of interest to the dish. And also allow your body time to adjust to a low sodium environment. Okay. And over time, as we reduce things like sugar and salt, those are probably the two best examples, your body, your palate, your brain will adjust to that. And you'll be able to get by on a lot less salt than you currently do. So those are, my two suggestions. and they require some patience. Patience number one in learning to use things like herbs and spices in a coherent way. And in that context, I strongly recommend that you go for established recipes. These are going to be global recipes, right? Taking inspiration from all the wonderful cooks of the world that have been doing this for hundreds and thousands of years and have come up with combinations of ingredients that are sensible and that work together with whatever main ingredient you're focusing on. And so start there before you start to branch off and get crazy creative, okay, with these things, because odd combinations can be a little bit off-putting. And odd combinations are, I would also include ratios. In other words, if you have too much of this and not enough of this other thing, then the balance is off and it can be harsh or bitter, too astringent, or just offensive in some way to the palate. So do take a look at established recipes initially anyway. And then again, have patience to allow your body to adjust to the new level of salt that you're using. It can take some time. Each person is a little bit different, but do give yourself adequate time because your body will adapt as it does to any other environmental inputs. Thank you. And next up from Catherine. Is there a resource to explore the combinations of Indian spices? How to use the combinations with different ingredients? Do you have a preference on where to purchase spices? So there are some books that focus on the use of spices and the discussion of spices. I don't have titles off the top of my head here, but if you want to reach out, Catherine, at support@rouxbe.com. I'd be happy to share a couple of titles with you. But otherwise, I'm sure you could also do a Google search and find a title or two that would be a suitable reference for you. And I always suggest starting at your local library. And if you find a title online and it's not at your local library, ask if your library is part of an interlibrary loan program where they can source a book from a library outside of your local system. And sometimes it comes from across town, other times it comes from across the country. And I do this with some regularity at no extra cost to me, but do inquire at your local library. And, online, while I haven't checked lately, I'm sure you can also find some discussion around spice combinations online. Another idea is to pick up an Indian cookbook or to go to an Indian recipe site and start cooking from the suggested recipes and just be aware of the combination of spices, as well as whether they're whole or ground and when they're used in the recipe. In other words, at the very front end, in the middle, or at the tail end of the recipe, as the spices will have a different effect at each of those stages. And I'll go ahead and take a moment here and mention a an Indian recipe website that I like, and it's called Hebbar's. It's spelled Hebbar, and I think it's apostrophe S, but Hebbar's Kitchen is probably what it's called. And I will use that as a reference with some regularity. It's all plant-based that I've seen, and there are thousands of recipes to choose from, all kinds of regional dishes that you can play with and enjoy. So hopefully that'll get you started with that portion of your question, Catherine. And let's see. The last question is, do you have a preference on where to purchase spices? For most people, I'm going to suggest that you go to a local Indian or South Asian grocery store. That's where you're going to find the freshest spices because the turnover is so fast with all of the the South Asian community members shopping at a grocery store like that. If you go to a mainstream grocery store, whether it's a Whole Foods or a Safeway or whatever it is, you're in my experience, you don't quite find that level of freshness. Okay. I get some of our stuff at one of the local Indian grocery stores, and we've got probably half a dozen of them within just a few minutes of our house here. And then also, I'm always bringing stuff back from India. So we have a rotating stash of fresh items that come in that are staple spices that we use. And I realize that's not for everybody. So I do want to mention the local Indian or other South Asian grocery stores. And of course, find one that appears to be well trafficked, frequented by a lot of folks, so you get that inventory turnover and the freshest product. Thank you, Catherine. And we've got the heybarskitchen.com posted for you for your reference. Thanks. Next up from Melissa, do you have a whole food plant-based Mexican cookbook that you like for inspiration? I don't think I do. I've got a section of Mexican cookbooks downstairs, but I think they're all conventional cookbooks. And I probably don't have a plant-based one only because I haven't added to that collection in a very long time. I'm sure they're out there. I recommend that you do a search and read the reviews from other end users to see what might best suit your style of cooking or the needs or wants for your kitchen. Okay, that might be a great way to approach that. And then, of course, start at your local library, just as I mentioned a few minutes ago, to source the book before purchasing it. And sometimes you don't even have to purchase it. Thank you. Liz says, is eating fish bad because of the plastics in the ocean? What is the least bad option for fish? So, yeah, this is an interesting question, I think. And I'm going to take a little tangent here, as I often do, and just say that a lot of times these questions depend on how you word them, right? And so when I see a question like this, I think about is eating fish bad because of the plastic? So, like, how much plastic is bad for you versus, how much is good for you is, one way to parse this. And very often in this country, in the United States, we ask the question, how much plastic is bad for you? And then we get all kinds of opinions, right, around how much plastic the average human can tolerate, and what kind of plastic is it, and so on and so forth. But if you pose it in a different way, how much plastic is good for you, then the answer is probably zero, and then the discussion takes on a different tone. But if we take a look specifically at your question that you've posed here, Liz, um, the the quick answer is that these larger fish, the predators that have a longer lifespan, have a longer time to accumulate plastics in their own bodies, and therefore give us the opportunity to eat more plastics if we consume them. Whereas, generally speaking, if you consume smaller fish at the lower end of the food supply chain, like sardines and herrings, then you're probably going to encounter fish with a lower level of plastic and therefore consume less plastic. That's the very general approach. There are variations, or I should say, some variation in terms of where the fish are sourced, for example. But we have this link for you to explore, which is from the Monterey Bay Aquarium folks that have maintained this website for many years now. And it's called Seafood Watch. They have a lot of information on ocean health, as well as different species of fish, recommendations on fishing or not fishing, consumption, or don't consume certain fish based upon populations globally. There are other websites that you might consider as well, but this is a great place to start. And ultimately, fish, you could probably consider fish to have some degree of plastic in them, but in some cases, the quantities are pretty darn small, and then you want to start to think about the health benefits of fish if you want to include that in your diet, and if that outweighs the concerns of the plastic that you've raised here. So this is a complex question. It's nuanced, and then ultimately you, the individual, get to decide what might be best for you and your situation. Thank you. And next up, a question from Brian, who says, how can you get 4 chicken carcasses for stock? Do they sell them at some grocery stores? So, this is a question, the answer to which has evolved, over the years. And depending on where you are and you will have an easier or a more difficult time sourcing them at stores. But let's talk through this, okay? So do start at grocery stores or, let me say butchers. Let me start there, because mainstream grocery stores oftentimes don't fabricate poultry in-house. They're going to get cases of pre-wrapped product that comes in, or they're going to get fabricated product, and then they might wrap it themselves and put weigh it and put a price on it. But if you can find a smaller shop, or specifically a place that does fabricate poultry, then there's going to be carcasses remaining from that process. So have a conversation with the butcher, see if they will sell you directly carcasses, and see where that takes you. Another choice is to look for a restaurant supply store, a cash and carry sort of a place. One brand name that we have around here in the Portland, Oregon metro area is Chef's Store, and it's a giant grocery store. The public can shop there as well. They are items branded and in pack sizes that are suitable for restaurants. And many of these places will sell cases of chicken bones. And it'll certainly get you a long distance when it comes to making some stock, more than just one batch, unless you've got a big cauldron to work with. But that would be a good place to start as well. Now, if you wanted to take some time and accumulate bones at home, then I would suggest buying whole chickens, fabricating them at home, preparing the meat however you want to, and then just save the carcasses in the freezer until you have accumulated, in this case, 4 carcasses to make whatever size batch of stock that you want to make. And then when I mention this, I also want to say, if you happen to buy already roasted chickens from the grocery store, to save the bones, because those can be used for stock production. Okay. Chicken or any bones that have been subjected to dry heat cooking can then be used in a moist heat environment, i.e. simmering in this case, to draw out flavor to make stock. So in the case of bones that come from a roasted bird, there's probably going to be some browning attached to that from that earlier cooking process, which will impart some color to the stock that you make, as well as some deeper flavor. So there's nothing wrong with that, unless for some reason you want a very white stock. But just keep that difference in mind, okay? And hopefully, somewhere in those suggestions, you'll find an answer to your question. Thank you. All right, Koila. I believe that's how the name is pronounced. Look for correction if that's incorrect. Hello. And let's see, the question is, I'm a recent graduate of the FOK program, the Forks Over Knives program. I am whole food, plant-based, and found it easy to adjust the assignment recipes in that course. I'm curious if the pro course is also adaptable. Yes, absolutely. And if you have any questions with a particular recipe in a context of a specific assignment, please reach out to us at support@rouxbe.com, and we'd be happy to work with you one-on-one to find a solution that works for you. And let's see, I think, yeah, I think that's probably the best way forward. Thank you very much. Next up from Melissa. What are a couple of other grains you like to use besides brown rice and quinoa, and how do you like to use them? Let's see, other grains that we might have around here. Oh, over time, let's see, we've had whole oats, oat groats. We've had spelt, and let's see, we've had farro, we've had triticale. Um, let's see. Oh, kamut, I think is one that we've had. We've had other colors of rice, red rices and black rices, purple rices from different parts of the world. And I will eat these sometimes just on their own, like as a bowl of rice if they're kind of sticky. That's the way I like my rice. Usually in a Japanese or an East Asian sort of a context of dining. Otherwise, a pilaf is a very common sort of outlet for grains. And a pilaf or a pulao, it's another name for the same sort of an approach to cooking grains, is popular across much of the world. And if you look at North American, also European cookery, and we get into Central Asia, into South Asia as well, you find this type of a preparation that focuses on the local grain. Now, commonly it's rice, but there's no reason why you can't use one of these other grains that are available to you. Okay. And at that point, the pilaf cooking method, which is basically to measure out your grains, to lightly saute those in some fat, and then you can add some aromatics. And if you want other more substantial vegetables or other ingredients in that dish, you would add them. Give them some a little bit of browning if you want, or you can immediately add some water in the ratio that's called for that particular grain. Put a lid on it, and then just gently simmer it until it's done. And you can make some adjustments at the end as needed, whether it's in seasoning or the addition of some fresh herbs, maybe finishing it with spices in some way, to create a pilaf or a pulao. And the end results are almost infinite, perhaps infinite. And I think if you explore that area of cooking as it spans a wide region of the world, you're going to find, I think, a lot of inspiration for using grains. Thank you. Next up, Diane says, what's the best way to clean stainless steel pans that is non-toxic? Can plain steel wool pads be used? I imagine I should stay away from kitchen cleaner. So, I'll tell you what I do. Again, there are multiple great answers, I'm sure, to your question here, but I'll share what I do. And for routine cleaning, I use these 3M brand scrubbies. I happen to use the blue colored one, which is kind of a medium coarseness. If you use a green one, it's even tougher and more coarse and can be used on more stubborn things, but it can also scratch other surfaces, depending on what other things you're cleaning. So I find the blue one to work well for us. Um, I've also got a stainless steel scrubby. And in the last question, I think, or maybe a couple of questions ago, I mentioned the nearby restaurant supply store. And so I just get a big old, um, I guess it's, yeah, I think it's just called a stainless steel scrub pad. It's not even steel wool, which is very fine. This is going to be pretty coarse. And in no time, it'll clean up stainless steel pans of the most stubborn um, things that might be hanging around. So do consider that, and perhaps steel wool, or the finer sort of item might work for you as well. But give it a try. In terms of cleansers, that's up to you. I use cleansers. Personally prefer cleansers that have no color and no aromas added to them. I tend to be sensitive to that kind of stuff, so I avoid it. And but if you want to stay clear of that sort of thing entirely, or maybe choose a brand that is maybe less harsh on the environment, that's I think a perfectly great way to go as well. There are many choices for you out there, but give it a try. Maybe no cleanser, maybe some sort of a cleanser that works for you. Thank you. And next up from Celine. Hello. I'm a chef and I'm also a Rouxbe graduate. Excellent. I'd like to know if you will suggest me a plant-based pastry book. First take a look at Fran Costigan's books. Fran is the mastermind behind uh, our our vegan dessert course, the Essential Vegans Dessert EVD, Essential Vegan Desserts course. And she's got a book or two up her sleeves that I think would be a great reference for you. Otherwise, I don't have a title off the top of my head. I would probably reach out to Fran for additional titles, frankly. And you could reach out to Fran as well at Fran, Fran, at Rouxbe.com. And I'm sure she'd be happy to respond to your question. Thank you. Next up from Juan. Can you recommend pastry or dessert books? Hey, well, almost the same answer I think I would give as I did to Celine's question, Juan. If you're looking for conventional pastry books, I've got those on shelves upstairs as well as downstairs, and I'd have to take a look at them. If you're looking for recipe books exclusively, let me know. If you're looking for instructional books, that's another category. Please let me know. Reach out at support@Rouxbe.com, and we could take this up one-on-one. Thank you. And Michael says, I'd like to prepare a vegetarian meatloaf. Any tips on recipes and techniques would be greatly appreciated. I do have a really nice one in mind. And this is actually from our Blue Zones course, and it comes from the Blue Zones cookbook. And, if you reach out to me, Michael, at support@Rouxbe.com, I'd be happy to continue this conversation with you, because I don't have that off the top of my head. All right. Thank you. And Michael's got a follow-up question here. I'd like to experiment with different rice pilaf themes. I'd like to understand what variations are possible and what cooking and experiments I could try. So, just a few minutes ago, I gave an overview to the approach to the pilaf or pulao method. But again, if you want to pick up a cookbook from almost any regional cuisine, that extends from here in the United States, right, North America, all the way through Europe, into Central Asia, you're going to find into South Asia as well. you're going to find the pilaf or pulau theme, and you can choose the cuisine or flavor profile that you like and that you'd like to play with. And so my recommendation is to just take a look at some of these regional cuisines. And once you understand the basic approach, right? The cooking method, the bones or the framework of that method, then you can really branch off on your own in terms of bringing in different aromatics as well as main ingredients. It can be very simple as well and elaborate at the same time. And so I hope that'll take you on your way. Thank you. Mark, we got a couple of questions from Mark, who says, I've been eating tofu as my core protein for 2 meals these days with veggies, legumes, sweet potatoes, etc. Wondering if any ideas on a tofu-based burrito with very mild and minimal spices. If I have any ideas, well, yeah, I think first of all, choose a tofu, and you're going to be aware of this already if you're eating tofu so frequently. But just choose a tofu that is in a texture or a firmness, right? That suits your palate and the structure of the burrito that you want to make. There are, some very firm, like extra firm versions that are very meaty in their consistency. And then, when it comes to spices, uh, here again, choose the cuisine that you want to use as your inspiration. And when I hear burrito, I think Mexico. So take a look at a Mexican cooking site, explore spice combinations that are typical of Mexican cooking, and start to experiment. And in terms of keeping it mild or minimal in its heat, for example, you have full control of that regardless of what the recipe states. And I think you can bring together very easily, things like cumin and coriander and chilies of different types. Some of these are hot. Some of them are a lot less hot than others. And then when it comes to the Mexican kitchen, the sauces or the salsas are very important. Excuse me a second. And this is where you can make fresh varieties of salsa as well as cooked varieties. And they come in so many different styles. And again, you can take a look at some at your fingertip resources to get some quick ideas or a quick specific recipe to follow to get you going. But that's one approach, right? And if you prefer Thai flavor profile as your inspiration, take a look at Thai ingredients and make a Thai inspired burrito, or it might be Indian or Korean or something else. Okay. But I think there's a lot of potential out there when you're talking about tofu, right? With the ingredients that you have mentioned, veggies, legumes, sweet potatoes, and then just altering the flavor profile that you bring into those ingredients. Have fun with that. Thank you. And Mark's follow-up question is, what veggies work best in a burrito? And it's really whatever you like. Yeah, really, my tongue is tied. I think the world is just so open to you when it comes to the veggies that you would choose for a burrito. And just think about whether you want to cook them, whether you want to use them raw, whether you want to cut them in a dice, large or small, whether you want to cook them, or cut them in a large format bâtonnet or something that's skinny and long. And that changes the mouthfeel, changes the structure of the burrito. But anything can really go into a wrap. And that's the beauty of a wrap. Whether you're using a flour tortilla or a corn tortilla or a rice wrap or something else. There are many, many options for you in terms of the broader wrap theme as well. Again, enjoy. Thank you. And Michael's got another question here. When using cilantro, I tend not to add it as a garnish, but optional add-ons for rice pilaf. What other optional add-ons could I use that make sense? Let's see. How about fresh mint? If you want to stay with the herb theme, other fresh herbs can work well, like thyme and oregano. Um, Rosemary, for me, is a little bit harsh, and I wouldn't add that to a pilaf, or at least not the pilaf that would come to mind right now. Um, yeah, I mean, those are a few herb suggestions. Another one that's kind of fun. This is a way to finish a rice dish, and that is to use. This is going to be a Southeast Asian inspired flavor combination here, uh, at least in my experience, and that is to grate lime zest. Could be lemon zest as well, but a bunch of it, and then fold that into the rice preparation at the very end so you get the aroma and the fresh flavor from that zest. And it has just a very nice feel to it. And yeah, I mean, those are, a few ideas. Um, Otherwise, if you want to sort of look toward a common Indian technique to finish a rice, a dish, um, this is maybe straying a bit from lentil preparations here, and other curries, but you could fry some spices in a little bit of oil, and then pour that over the top, and then fold that in to get a certain effect. And I would again take a look at a particular preparation to take a cue as to what combination of spices and in what ratios might make best sense for what it is you want to try to achieve. Okay, but those are some ideas that come to mind. Thank you. Barbara said, I'm enrolled in the cake baking and decorative arts course on Rouxbe and noticed that there isn't a textbook of my course materials to buy for future reference. Will there be in the future? The quick answer would be no. In our courses, we have the lesson and the text explanation, as well as video lessons and video recipes and text recipes that have an explanation and a demonstration of the key methods and techniques that go into whatever course it is that you take. And, therefore, at present anyway, we do not have accompanying textbooks because all of that is built into the course as we construct it. Now, of course, there are additional books that you can buy that might cover, certain techniques around baking and cake decorating. And, if you want to inquire about, that topic, please reach out. Guess where? At support@rouxbe.com. And I'd be happy to take this up one-on-one with you to dive a little deeper into what your specific interests are, and then provide a couple of suggestions on titles that you might consider. Thank you. Melissa says, what is the best way to incorporate espresso into a recipe? Also, would it be best to buy espresso beans that are stronger? So, yeah, I was going to say something like, just give it to me in a cup so I can drink it while I'm cooking. But I'm guessing you're talking about maybe desserts. I guess it could be marinades for savory items as well. But I guess it would depend on what you're making. So I would want more context, and for these sorts of situations, it's really best if you want our opinion. to reach out to us at support@rouxbe.com. If you have a particular recipe that you have in mind, then you might follow that author's procedure to make that particular item. Okay, so there's a couple of things, a couple of paths to consider here. Okay, and would it be best to buy espresso beans that are stronger? So espresso is a method of preparing coffee under pressure. And so once upon a time in North America and other parts of the world, okay, espresso meant dark roasted coffee beans that produced a particular style of coffee, right? Through this process of expressing the coffee under pressure, hence espresso, okay, or café express in Spanish. Um, these days, we find lighter roasts of beans being used to make espresso. So the result is typically a more acidic uh, product, a beverage, a coffee drink, or ingredient in this case, um, with some different flavor notes to it as well. And so it it's going to depend on what style you prefer, or if you're following a recipe, what the author of the recipe intends, right, with the finished product. So it will come down to probably some practice on your part as well to find if you have a preference between lighter or darker roasted beans that the espresso is made from. Okay. So do keep that in mind, when we talk about espresso and how you might incorporate that into a preparation of some sort, because it does, the degree of roasting really does change the acidity level as well as the flavor profile, right, of the coffee. And this would be true of the cup of coffee that you're drinking as well. um, the degree of roast makes a very big difference. There are other nuances that go into making that cup of coffee um, that can take it in one direction or another too. But that gets to be maybe a little bit too nuanced for today. All right, but keep that in mind, Melissa, as you play around with espresso in your cooking. Thank you. And for our last question today, we have another one from Michael, who says, I want to talk with a chief or a chef at a restaurant. Same thing, right? Chef is the chief of the restaurant or a station. So I want to talk with a chef at a restaurant about his preparation techniques. Some food is so good. I would love to meet the chief that prepared the meal. Is there a tactful way to do this? This is a fair question. I think the main thing to keep in mind is if you want to um, meet the chef and sit down and talk with this person, that you want to do this during the slow period of the day, which is commonly between the lunch and dinner service period. So it's going to be, maybe early to mid afternoon. Um, but otherwise, start out with an email. Introduce yourself and what topic it is that you want to discuss. And then when you find that person that is willing to sit down with you and talk about their menu and their approach to cooking, and hopefully we're talking about a restaurant that you're familiar with and the food that you like, that you want to delve a little bit deeper into with this conversation with the chef, and then just ask them what works best for them in terms of a meeting time. And I think you'll have your date as it goes. All right. So yeah, enjoy that process. I've done that many times over the decades when I want to have an informational meeting with somebody to learn more about their view on a particular topic. So I think what you're doing is not unusual, but just be aware of the timings that might be most convenient for the chef. Thank you very much, Michael, for this question. And I want to thank all of you for your participation today. And we'll meet again. And until then, happy cooking.